Suddenly, a solar storm took a plane down, almost.
Basically, we can go back 150 years with no electricity, no internet.
Why are the Russians doing when the whole AI thing?
It's a mix of literally biological beings and robotics and AI. So
It's really the nuclear crap of this generation. We're gonna lose the brains of your people.
what's next for Apple?
Adam didn't know what is the taste of the apple, right?
All right, TrickCasters, welcome back to this week's episode. I'm in the house with Amir Abdelazim, as always, who hopefully will have some interesting stories for us, some interesting leadership lessons, tech lessons. So Amir, happy to see you. What is on the plate today?
Happy to see you as well, Alex. It's always good to see you. Good to see you, the TrickCasters. We're becoming very familiar to be dealing with you guys, and I love what we're doing here, Alex. This week I had three interesting topics. The first one is the Airbus. Been always talking about the fuck ups of Boeing, but this one we have one for Airbus. Suddenly, a solar storm took a plane down, almost. Pilot made a strong rebound and controlled the landing, and there was a lot of injuries, but thank God no fatalities. And then we have another story about the biodrones, new development. Russians are
And this is coming straight out of Russia, yes, where it's a mix of literally biological beings and robotics and AI. So that's going to be, let's say, a tricky one to navigate ethically.
Yeah, and then the last one, the news about Tim Cook stepping down was in 2026. Whether it's news or rumors, let's see what is happening there. Where do you want to kick it?
Yeah, let's start with the solar flare stories and the Airbus story, maybe to give the viewers a little bit of context. But basically, Airbus identified a vulnerability on their A320 family aircrafts, where basically there's intense solar radiation, like solar flares. It can corrupt data, it can affect some of the electronics, and it can basically lead to a sudden altitude drop. Now, it's probably not something you want to hear when you're taking flights often, but solar flares are a real concern, especially with the Christmas holidays coming up. Yeah. But I think maybe before we kick this one off into the technicals, because I know you got a lot of history in your mind on Boeing, on Airbus, and the leadership, let's say, the competitions that they had over the decades. This is with solar flares is something we don't really think about often, but if it happens and it happens at a large scale, we're basically unprotected. Satellites could be fried. All of our electronics, as we know, could be fried today. Basically, we can go back 150 years with, having lamps again and basically no electricity, no internet, no modern connectivity. So could you give us maybe a bit of a context there, Amir, if that's something we should be paranoid about first and foremost on a regular basis? And maybe we can get into the Airbus details from there.
I think about it as the more we think we know, the more we know we don't know. And then every day you learn something about how nature is actually having its final call. Like this week alone, we had like floods, we had volcanoes in Ethiopia, we had earthquakes in damaging one in other parts of the world, and then we had this solar storm. Do we know about the solar storm? I think we know. The famous one was the Carrington event in I think 1849, and it literally have put the earth to stand still at this time. Like people at this time there was the telegraphs, and there was that was the only technology that they have, literally, actually, and it's managed to stop that completely. The good side about it is Northern Lights. For the people that were big fans of Northern Lights, were seen actually up to the south, up to Cuba. You would see solar lights to the point that people actually woke up in the night watching the Northern Lights. However, this event doesn't happen often. It's maybe once every 100 or 150 years. But when it happens, it's very, very strong. The less frequent event, the less intense, normally happens once every 11 years, which is the solar cycle. And then the smaller ones that we go and enjoy on the Northern Lights. When you go and watch them there. So there's a cycle for the sun. 2025, 2026 is the peak of the current solar cycle. So that's why we are actually going to see some of these solar attacks. it rang a bell with me when few episodes ago we were talking about putting data centers into the space and thinking that's the coolest thing to do, and even Google jumping into the game. Let's talk about it next week. There, but yeah, looks like the sun can have a different say here.
I think about this probably more than I should, because when you start to have a family, you start to decide where you want to settle long term. If, let's say, pardon the French, if shit hits the fan, what do you do, right? And I'm always
Mhm.
looking at a lot of cars that we have. It's all electronics, motorcycles, TVs, cell phones. And, we're moving away from even cars that are using like mechanical gears that you can still replace parts, swap parts without having to go to the BMW center and get the guys to connect their hardware to your electronics to see why the light is flashing, right? So it's always on my mind at some extent, like if stuff like that happens. And again, I'll even be the first one to admit I've looked into stuff that like basically a radiation resisting technology, like in the sense that you can buy some stuff that if there's an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, which is kind of the equivalent of a very strong solar flare, let's say, that it is resistant to some of that to some extent. And it worries me that if stuff like that happens, which is proven that it happens every so often, like you said, the mild one every 11 years, a major one every 150 years. So if we have another one tomorrow, all of our modern communication gets wiped, probably. And it's back to Stone Age, right? You can't use your debit card, credit card, you can't access your bank. What happens in that situation? And of course, very relevant having, potentially airplanes going down worldwide if that happens, because you lose GPS potentially, or is there some kind of a defense mechanism for that, Amir?
So the apocalypse scenario, I think it's inevitable anyway. It will happen. So I wouldn't really put it in my head that it will like that actually wouldn't stop my life on that moment, to be honest. I think we should be the main worry is our new generation are not equipped to deal with handy stuff. And I think this is a worry I would be keeping in our mind. Like this, the basic survival kit now is fully dependent on the ChatGPT. So, and if it doesn't exist, so the probably, uh, I think it would help that we start working on our old skills. My generation would go to the army or go to the camps or go to places where we really like learn how to survive some non-electronic era. However, actually, what really happened, funny enough, the A320 was the first to be called fly by the wire. You mentioned the mechanics of the car. So, because when this happened, the first thing that came to my mind, why this one? Why the A320?
Mm.
Why not the
Right,
A380?
right.
Why not the old ones? Why only this one? And why actually Airbus immediately actually responded very strong, actually, like a quick response. The plane like landed on 30th of October. We're talking about 25 days, and they knew what happened and they're acting on it. So why this? Why this one specifically? And then I start digging a little bit, and that's where I came to the first fly by the wire campaign of Airbus. So before the A320 family, actually, because it's A319s and others in it, the flying of the plane was mechanical. So you do mechanical work on the plane, and the A320 was the first to actually be electronically flown. So that actually at least explains why the older ones were not impacted. And what happened is that when the solar, at least the definition of the incident, it's bit flip. So a bit that should move in zero, but instead of coming as zero, it came as one or the opposite. So it flipped a bit. And when you flip a bit in a very sophisticated program that you're flying a plane with, that's actually make the plane decide on its own what needs to done. And in this case, it decided a nosedive. The pilot was so alerted, and his co-pilot gurus really like well done. They managed to recover the situation and land the plane. However, okay, so when we started to have electronic planes, that made it vulnerable. That's why the old planes were not impacted. But why not the A380? Why only this one? Why not Boeing? Why this plane at this time? What happened? What just happened now to make sure that the A320 suddenly realizes that there is solar winds? So it's kind of very interesting intersections happened altogether. So the A320 family came 1984. This is the first wave of them. So so if you count, we're talking about 4 solar cycles from 1890, 3 solar cycles actually from 1984. So the first one, 90s, and the A320 were still actually not up there. The second one was very weak, and this is the strongest solar since the A320. That's the first coincidence.
Major one since.
Yeah, and that's the first intersection that the A320 coming with a good solar or a peak one. And then actually the second wave of the planes came in 1994, and it became the mainstream that actually Airbus is trying to push, was sealed against radiation. And that's why it didn't get impacted. And so the second question here is actually, when you raised the standard for the A380 and the next wave of it, why didn't you go back and upgrade the A320s with a protection against radiation? And this is the question I have in my mind. What happened here? This is where actually I would call it a tech leadership discussion that we need to have together. Where do we draw the line that the upgrade is an upgrade or it's an essential upgrade that we need to reverse to every old version? So I'm sure they have done a lot of upgrades to the A380 and its family, but why didn't upgrade the radiation protection to the A320?
Cost money, Amir. Don't you know? If nobody's complaining, if it ain't broken, don't fix it.
So the sun was kind to us, so let's take our chances. So I think this is where I think we need to open our eye. Like, cosmic things happen, that's true. And it's also true if we don't know that there is an impact. But what was really alerting for me in this story, you knew. That's why you fixed the A380. I was first surprised by the response. Like it was very quick response, really quick. Like hop, let's go. This is the batch. That's where we're gonna install. Let's take it 6,000 planes all worldwide. We're gonna land them. We're gonna software upgrade them, and it's gonna take 24 hours, and everything will be good. Mm-hmm. Really, like you really knew,
right?
And this is where I'm a bit actually having all of these lamps on my head. Like, why they haven't done it?
And what's your, let's put the conspiracy hat on, the tinfoil hat. So let's just speculate here for a second. What would be your wildest guess?
There's a term that I like to use, actually. It's called technical debt. I wouldn't make it conspiracy. I think it's I don't think it's conspiracy. I think it's a bad engineering choice. When we design systems or when we upgrade networks or where we do things, we make choices on not to do everything. If I put 5G network somewhere, I don't put it everywhere. I put it in places where it's gonna give me a higher ROI first, and then I start spreading when it starts making sense. And so in a way or another, there is always a technical debt. Like there is someone actually, I owe them an upgrade, and someone that have taken it to the next step. I think this was a bad judgment from the Airbus team. And maybe the lesson learned here is that when it comes to safety or upgrading against faults, that should not be called an upgrade. It should be called what is called. It's fixing fault or fixing the vulnerability, which what they have done now. Like, you ended up doing it anyway. And right. that would be my thinking here. But having said that, I think Airbus also responded in a very quick and interesting manner.
Well, in that case, since we are talking about airborne objects, maybe it made sense to go into the next story, which is basically the biological drones being developed in Russia. And it sounds awfully familiar. It sounds like stuff that both the Soviet Union and the Allies have experimented with actually during the previous wars. And pigeons seem to be one of the first go-to animals because I guess of their navigation skills or how trainable they are. But back in the day, if you recall, they used to get pigeons and train them to not only take photographs of where the opponent's ships were, but I believe it actually at one point trained them to be the trigger man, let's say, call them trigger man, for where the bombs get dropped, because they would be able to basically pinpoint the location of the boats on the map. And I'm gonna maybe as you kick us off on the story, I'll try to pull it up at the same time. But interesting that it starts with the pigeon, and yeah, to get basically the users some context. So there's a Russian company called Niri, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and they're playing around with pigeon-fitted, basically brain implants, where they are using AI, and the idea is to remote control them where you want to go, and yeah, basically Neuralink, let's say, for pigeons. What are your first impressions when you saw that story? What do you think are kind of the long-term implications of that?
The first engineer inside me is like, wow, that's cool. Like you solved a lot of problems, and the pigeons specifically has been the first mobile communication in reality. And you know how obsessed am I with communication. So the first impression was, that's really like wow, especially when you see the full kit. So the pigeon would have a surgery, and the chip will be installed, and there will be a bag actually powered with solar, and the bag will have the computing power and the control, and it will also have the camera. So the pigeons are literally equipped with how they can really like become real soldiers into the war.
And at the
It's
same time, I'm just pulling up an image for those watching. This is how they would use pigeons back in the day for and train them for dropping the bombs, basically. And yeah, very interesting that again they're going with pigeons one more time.
but earlier they were used to train the pigeons, and training the pigeon was normally taking some time, and then also it's very hard to control the information before doing that. And the way they actually install the chip now is that training is avoidable. So you take the pigeon into the surgery, the chipset is installed, and then up ready to go next day immediately. And somehow I thought, we have not been looking at Russia. What are the Russians doing when the whole AI thing happening? They are in sanctions, they are in war with the West, they're not even having access to any of the chipset. Like in China, we were talking about, like there's a chipset war, there's here a chipset, there's here no chip. But for Russia, it's blocked. Like for the last maybe 10 years, there is no exchange of tech. What are the Russians doing? And they have been known that they really do an efficient innovation. That's their style in reality. So famous story of when they went to the space station and trying to get the astronauts to write in the spaceship, the Americans took 10, 15 years to get a zero gravity pen, and the Russians used the pencil. And it's a good repeat here, if you can call it. Like instead of actually wasting all of this time working on building drones that are affordable, as horrible as it is, they decided to use the pigeons. So yeah, that's the fascination about the engineering part. Now let's talk about the non-engineering part. Like, what the hell is that? Like, what is this? First, the charter of NERA never said they only doing it for the pigeons. They are actually developing the chipset for all mind control.
And we can
So
see this already that Russian troops have started equipping strike kamikaze drones with all kinds of frequencies. So it's not unthinkable that they would use this in their current military conflicts.
not just the pigeons. I think if you read the charter of NERA, they are talking about other animal and human. It's not excluded. So, and now that will make us put this next to the Neuralink, which is the next big thing from the Western side, actually. And then say, how is the development process of the Neuralink going compared to this process of NERA in on the Russian side of the game? I think Elon Musk took 5 years to get a human volunteer to test the Neuralink on, while it looks here that this is like done. Like,
There's
and
no ethical, let's say, hoops to jump through to get approvals like you would in the West or like you'd get, let's say, in Germany or any other European country for that matter.
yeah, and it has been almost the Russian style, right? So even if you throw back on the World War II, that's the mode of the Soviet Union of like throw as much troops as you can, let them all die. One wave will pass, or act in. There's always a higher cause. Doesn't matter how many people die. Like this uh, um, setup. That being fair, if the Soviet Union haven't done that, no one would have won against Hitler.
Yeah.
As well. So it takes one to get one, if you can call it this way. So I think this situation leaves the rest of the world in a very interesting place. What do we do? Because the AI strategy of Russia is very clear. It's the new nuclear club. Actually, they call it the nuclear club strategy. If I don't have my own LLM, which I 100% agree, I'm not sovereign anymore. So for Russia, developing their own AI is a sovereign program, which I think it should be the case for everyone else. If you don't have your own LLM, you're not sovereign anymore. It's really the nuclear club of this generation. You're going to lose the brains of your people. Zero control. And they're doing it right. They have invested into a couple of their own companies, I think Herdex and Serpabank. And they claim that they have one of the most sophisticated LLM models worldwide. We cannot try or prove yes or no because it's in Russian and we cannot access it. But they have a program and they know what they're doing about it, and they think about it as what everyone should think about it. To be honest, it's the nuclear club of this generation.
Is the new Manhattan Project, which is basically the equivalent of the nuclear bomb. Let's say whenever the Americans were developing the nuclear bomb, they flew in all the scientists in a very secret way, and basically it is the new Manhattan Project, which is the AI race. An interesting approach there, just to maybe highlight. US just kind of throws money at it, and they use their, let's say, State Department as the marketing hand to get investment from UAE, from other countries, right? And then you have China, who's doing that at a fraction of the cost. That you have some models that are, either competing or even beating some of the US-based models, and they're doing it at a fraction of the price. And a lot of times these models are also much smaller in compute and in size, that you can have it portable offline on your device, that you don't need to access it through the web. And I guess what is that quote? It's like invention is the necessity of invention is the fruit of necessity, or something along those lines. That basically in the case of Russia, you're, like I said, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, they're in the war, they got sanctions. And other than that, as a country, they've been, let's say, pretty self-sustaining for a very long time, because these sanctions have been around for, more than 10 years since the Crimean invasion. And then in the Soviet Union, of course, they were cut off from the Western countries. So they always had that mind, so they have to make it work with what they have. And they have pretty, let's say, ingenious people, like some of the best nuclear physicists, athletes, and all kinds of, even Nobel Prize winners came from Russia. So they do have that that mindset of straight to the point, no nonsense, very pragmatic, very practical. What do you think would be the differentiator in their, let's say, sovereign LLM or AI company that maybe would outcompete the West in some form? Would it just be a price thing, that they can do it cheaper? Or do you think there's a other component where they could outperform the competition?
I don't care about the price, to be honest. And I think it's just the flashy conversations that people put when it comes to the economical cost. Because at the end of the day, what differentiates sovereignty of nations and the productivity of civilizations is the product of the land, right? Capitalism is the product of the land, is a remarkable, significant thing about the Western civilization. If you go back even to World War I, so there's the first world, which is the West, and there's the second world, which is the East, and there is the third world, which is the people in the middle that didn't decide where to go. And the whole essence, whether you agree or don't agree about how this economical works, this is a capitalism again, where it actually runs and gets ruled by actually the money conversation, and let's make sure that we have a GDP close to 2%, we have an inflation around the 2%, and we continue growing. And with that, the value of money on the first world actually doesn't mean anything because it's within that bubble. It's only making sense to the Russians or the Chinese if they start dealing with it, right? If they want something. And then when we went after the post World War II, and then coming closer to where we are now, the first world and second world started becoming interdependent. So the dollar or the economical value starts to have a meaning here. Now, in the last decade, when we started seeing the U.S. putting sanctions, they somehow forced the Chinese and Russians to not look at the cost. You're saying it's $2 billion. Yeah, that's your own. You're saying it's $2 billion. You put the price.
It's relative to your GDP, and it's yeah.
But you also priced the chip. You priced the salary. You priced everything on your own ecosystem. You are saying that the engineer will be paid $20K a month in the US, and I'm saying the engineer will be paid what is equivalent to $1K in China. It become like two different ecosystems. So comparing the DeepSeek value versus the OpenAI value is only relevant if you're gonna make an exchange, right? And if you're not gonna make an exchange, I can say whatever. I can say it's $1. You can say it's $10. So what? Who cares? Like, it's the whole ecosystem, right? I think who will really suffer in the middle is the third world, where to decide to be. So if now DeepSeek is the one, then I will lose my sovereignty to China, which was the case with Huawei, for example, or other suppliers, that there was a lot of claims that you're able to penetrate through the Chinese intelligence. Or I lose my sovereignty to the US and I join that club. And this is layered in many things. Or I go to the Russians, which they are known to be efficient. Like, you can say anything about the Russians, but they are known to be efficient. And they are the richest when it comes to rare metal. And they are the richest when it comes to brains that are managed to work on this ecosystem in reality. So, and back to the point again about the cost. It's a chipset that I decided how much it cost, because it's simply rare metals. We are putting it together. We put the rules and we decided the cost. Yeah. And it's an engineer that I decided how much is the salary for. And those together collectively, they were doing it away. In the first world, there's Israel. And Israel has a very interesting, different ecosystem actually on doing their own innovation. You finish your high school, you join the army. And in the army, that's where everyone innovates. That's where everyone learns. That's where everyone becomes really getting the higher education. And they innovate within the army. That's also why the Israeli ecosystem is also interesting. The 4%, the highest ratio of R&D compared to GDP in the world is Israel. Yeah. But it's also part of the defense budget. So
defense industry first.
You cannot really draw the line here. We say which one is which in most of other countries it's covered. So long story short, no, I think if Russians manage to do it in English or another language that other people speak, or they manage to make everyone else speak Russian, then actually they definitely have a market there. But we will see a fight. The fight is coming actually, and unfortunately it will be in the third world. And if any country now doesn't want to be a third world, LLM models should be created now somewhere in every lab on one of these countries, because that's the breakthrough.
Some independent, some sovereign third path. Yeah. And since we're on the topic of AI, let's switch over to Apple. I know you wanted to cover the story. There's been rumors that Tim Cook might be leaving Apple soon. It seems to be the case that Apple is denying this and saying it's not coming anytime soon. I guess the concern is usually whenever there are those kinds of changes, there's always some price volatility when it comes to the stock of the company. So, maybe they're trying to mitigate it from that angle. But what's going to happen here, Amir? I mean, he's going to retire sooner or later. The question is how soon and who's going to be the replacement?
I salute you on the stock part, because I think that whole conversation is about stock. So, and the point is, to be able to answer this question, you take one step back. Let's talk about Apple. What is Apple? Steve Jobs' Apple. And the bitten apple of Steve Jobs, Adam's bite to the apple that threw it, Adam from heaven to earth. That this very desirable product that you need to take the bite of, regardless whether when Adam took the bite of the apple, Adam didn't know what is the taste of the apple, right? And that's where actually the whole story of Apple is around. Steve Jobs' Apple. So Steve Jobs' Apple was about creating this so desirable, sleeky product that when you see it, you want to have it, and playing on that desire. And then that
So
was
let's call him innovator, right? Because it was a big innovation. And what adjective would you give Tim Cook in comparison?
I would give him the word reliable, but also Steve Jobs' style was not just this. He has a very famous quote, actually. He was saying, if I ask the customer what does he want, by the time I know what the customer wants and I decide to make it for them, they will already want something else. So his product style is this very desirable product, and that desirable product is a surprise. So if we have the time machine to go back to the moment Apple decided to switch off the AirPod or kill the AirPod really and make it an iPhone and see the stock behind Steve Jobs on the screen, it would be like this. Someone is saying AirPods is gone. This is big part of the shares. iPhone is the new big thing. It's going up there. It's like, now if you put that aside and then look at what actually the school of Tim Cook was. I'm the most reliable second comer. I will not be the first to give you anything in reality. No, Apple's under Cook was not the first to give anything.
Would you say it's a fair assessment that he's a great operator, but he can't maybe take something from 0 to 1, but he's good at managing it once it's already in place? And to give credit where it's due, one of my business partners, he's like a great operator. And as much as I respect him, he lacks the creativity or maybe the innovative kind of mindset to create something new. And usually I'd be the one that I have to create something new and I get bored. Like, I just don't like the operations, the day-to-day, the management. And he'd be the one that's great at getting something that's 90% good and maybe improving it to 95 to 98% and making sure that it runs smoothly. Would you say that's a fair comparison to draw the parallels to Steve and Tim Cook?
Tim Cook is an efficient operator. That's 100%. And I like it. But I actually don't think he have killed the creativity in Apple. I think he have control to the creativity in Apple. It's not that impulsive company anymore. And look at the numbers. He took a company. Yeah, I know. Like the last section we talked about, numbers we make it, but with the rules we made, he took a $450 billion Apple, and it's now $4 trillion Apple. Reliability, second comer, ecosystem, everything is good till it's not good. This is where the problem with the operators is, that their eyes are always on this ball of efficiency and reliability. And it worked very well with Apple when the cycle of innovation was maybe 5 to 10 years. I'm the most efficient. I'm really Apple. I have resources. I can buy however I want. If you're going to go with NFC, immediately I'll come in 2 years, I come up with my, what is it called? Apple Pay. If you're going to come with wireless earphones, I will come with AirBuds, which will be the best product ever in history, in reality. I take my time to do it. The cycle of innovation was high. But when was this cycle of innovation broken? It's with Gen AI. It became very quick. And it became very quick even for Apple to catch up. Was that quick to become the second? So, oops, I'm moving from second to third to fourth. I'm going down, actually, when it comes to this cycle of innovation. So that's where I think the time of the leadership change in Apple is due. It took them from 1 to 10. So, and it's not the impulsive, surprising style that you all anticipate. You don't know which product will be announced with Steve Jobs. Where is the Apple? How it will look like? Where's this new sexy product that I cannot resist? to the point that we know iPhone 18 will look X now before it even comes, and how it will look like. But the ecosystem is complete. But then again, when it comes to AI, the cycle of innovation became much quicker than you waiting to be the second runner to make it with perfection. Now we're losing cycles. What do you think?
I think it's a fair assessment. I guess the question that comes to mind: what's next for Apple? Who's going to take over, and what direction do you think they're gonna go into?
My bet, it will always be one from inside, and the reliable Tim Cook, the reliable, subtle, strong operator that knows that actually everything has to be stable like a river, will prepare the market to the transition. So it becomes inevitable. Like, we will know iPhone 18, how it will look like 1 year before iPhone 18. We will know the CEO of Apple 1 year before he becomes the CEO of Apple. And we will see it very smoothly being injected to us. So the market will wake up in the morning, Tim Cook resigned or stepped down, and my vote here will be John Ternus is just announced to be the next CEO. And then, continue having your cup of tea. Like, nothing. It's not a, like, wow, like Elon Musk stepped out of Tesla. Let's see
It's
the
not going
stock.
to be a shocking news. It's going to be something well prepared, well crafted, way in advance. And maybe just a quick word on who is John Ternus and what do you think is the direction that he would potentially take with Apple?
John is the hardware guy. And he's the one who made the M chip. He's the one who actually is driving the product again. He is an innovator, but not a surprising innovator. He has been under Tim Cook enough to be bored, like you are bored, and to actually on the same time have that room of actually innovation. So if someone can actually put a fast track cycle to the M chip and the AI and the Apple Intelligence and create this new Apple Intelligence integrated in everything ecosystem using Apple hardware, it would be John Ternus. And John Ternus will be the part that I will be thinking, that the person that I will be thinking twice before I put him as a CEO. And I will also be thinking twice before I don't put him as a CEO. He's too critical in the ecosystem of Apple that if I put someone else, I would demotivate him for sure. And if I put him, I might risk that my engine that he's taking care of gets disturbed. But my bet is John Ternus. It's not going to be the software gentleman. It's not going to be someone from outside. It will be John Ternus. And the way they are pushing him up to the media to star events and really start coming sometimes even before Tim into the events, they are preparing John.
It's a lead indicator. Yeah.
In the good Tim Cook style that will become very smooth and you will just get it on a cup of espresso and then all will be good. So that's my verdict. Do you agree?
Let's see what happens. But in the style that Apple does things for the past couple of decades, I think it makes a lot of sense. And as always, we'll bring the receipts for when the news comes through.
Yes, let's do that. So, Alex, thank you very much.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure as always. Looking forward to next week's conversation. And again, for anybody watching, thank you so much. Looking forward to get the feedback from our audience as well.
Have a wonderful week ahead, my friend.
You too. Speak later. Bye-bye.